Imagine that tomorrow the global temperature drops 10 degrees. The crops die. The rivers freeze. The wind cuts like glass. Now imagine that you do not have a down coat. You do not have central heating. You do not have a supermarket. You do not have a hospital. You only have your hands, your brain, and the people who are with you. How much time would you survive? The majority of us would not last 1 week. But between 25,000 and 115,000 years ago, humans not only survived the Ice Age, they dominated it. And the methods they used to do it are so ingenious, so brutal, and so completely outside of what we imagine, that archaeologists are still processing what they found. The last Ice Age was not a single event. It was a series of glacial advances and retreats that lasted tens of thousands of years. In the worst moments, an ice sheet of more than 3 kilometers thick covered what is today Canada, northern Europe, and large parts of Asia. The sea level was 120 meters lower than today. The average temperatures were between 6 and 10 degrees colder than in the present day. And humans, without any modern technology, found the way to not only survive, but to expand, innovate, and create some of the most impressive works of art in human history. How? Let us begin with something that seems simple, but that changed everything. Bones. Humans of the Ice Age discovered that mammoth, reindeer, and bison bones were not just food. They were building material. They were tools. They were clothing. In 1965, Ukrainian archaeologists excavating near Mezhyrich found something that no one expected. Dwelling structures built entirely with mammoth bones. More than 150 mammoth bones, carefully assembled to create domes that could house entire families. The mammoth tusks served as structural arches, the skulls formed the bases. The shoulder blades were used as shingles. The archaeologist Olga Soffer of the University of Illinois studied these structures and concluded that they required a level of planning, cooperation, and engineering knowledge that no one had associated with humans from 15,000 years ago. They were not caves. They were not improvised shelters. They were houses built in the coldest tundra in the world, with the only materials available. But there is one invention from the Ice Age that anthropologists consider potentially more important than any other brood. More important than controlled fire. More important than stone weapons. A bone needle. The first known needle with an eye dates back to approximately 50,000 years ago. Found in the Denisova cave in Siberia. Why does a needle matter so much? Because before the needle, humans wrapped skins around their body. After the needle, humans wore clothes. And the difference between wrapping and wearing is not aesthetic. It is the difference between losing 40% of body heat and conserving it almost completely. The researcher, Gillian Vogelsang Eastwood of the Textile Research Center in Leiden, spent years documenting that sewn clothing fitted to the body. Inner layers of soft fur against the skin. Waterproof outer layers allowed humans to operate in temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius. Without that technology, human expansion towards northern Europe and Siberia, and eventually towards America across the Bering Land Bridge, would have been biologically impossible. A small bone needle, that is what made the colonization of a continent possible. Now, here is where the story gets truly strange. Because humans of the Ice Age did not only eat what they hunted, they ate things that we today would consider unthinkable. The paleontologist Hervé Bocherens of the University of Tübingen analyzed isotopes in human bones from this period and found something surprising. Humans of the Ice Age were hypercarnivores. They were not omnivores with a varied diet. They consumed between 70 and 90% of their calories from animal sources, levels comparable to modern wolves and lions. But what they ate was not only muscle meat, they ate bone marrow, extracted by breaking the bones with stones, specifically designed for that purpose. They ate organs, liver, kidneys, heart, lungs, immediately after a hunt. before the cold froze them. They ate fat in amounts that today would seem extreme to us, because fat was the only energy source sufficiently dense to maintain body heat in Arctic temperatures. And they ate something else. Insects. Archaeologists have found evidence in multiple sites that humans of the Ice Age consumed larvae, worms, and insect eggs during the months when the hunt was impossible. Not out of desperation, out of intelligence. Insects provide high-quality protein to fat and micronutrients that muscle meat does not always contain. Here is where the story becomes philosophically interesting. Because fire during the Ice Age was not just heat. It was information. It was communication. It was storage. Archaeologists who study the settlement patterns of this period have found that human groups maintained central fires that burned continuously for weeks, sometimes months, not for comfort, but because extinguishing a fire in temperatures of -20 degrees meant the end of the group. Restarting a fire with flint, when your fingers are frozen and your tools are buried under the snow, was not an option. Fire was the most valuable asset of a human group, more valuable than weapons, and more valuable than stored food. The archaeologist Dennis Sandgate of Simon Fraser University documented something even more notable. Human groups of this period developed relay systems to keep the fire burning during the night, with individuals assigned specifically to watch it while the others slept. The same night guard system that we described in the video about ancestral sleep, but here with a different function. Not just protection, but preservation of the fire. And one more function that archaeologists have documented recently: fire as a signal. Separate groups of the same tribe could communicate at distances of several kilometers using smoke patterns during the day and flame patterns during the night. Before written language, before the telephone, before any communication technology that we can recognize, fire was already a signal system. But none of these innovations is the one that most surprises researchers. What surprises them the most is art flying. At the coldest point of the Ice Age, when survival conditions were most extreme, when every calorie and every hour of light were critical, humans found time to create the Chauvet Cave in France, dated at approximately 36,000 years, contains paintings that modern art experts describe as masterful in technique, perspective, and emotional expression. The animals are represented in motion. The shadows suggest depth. The groups of figures communicate narrative. The artist or artists who created these paintings, working with primitive torches in the cold interior of a cave, with pigments made of charcoal and mineral oxides, demonstrated a mastery of drawing comparable to that of Renaissance artists. The researcher Yin McGill, in their analysis of the cognition of prehistoric humans, argues that these paintings are not evidence of primitive thought. They are evidence of completely modern thought. The same type of thought that you use right now in a brain that functioned exactly the same as yours, in conditions that would have destroyed the majority of us in days. Think about what this means. Humans who lived during the Ice Age were not primitive. They were not less intelligent than you. They were not waiting to evolve. They were using exactly the same brain hardware that you use to solve problems that we, with all our technology, probably could not solve. They built mammoth-bone houses because they had no other option. They sewed clothes with bone needles because they understood body thermodynamics better than we give them credit for. They kept the fire burning for months because they knew it was the difference between life and death, and in the midst of all that, of the cold, of the hunger, of the darkness, they found time to paint horses in motion on the walls of the caves, not to survive, but because that is what the human being does when they are completely free. They create, and that has not changed either.